Hatapu, Namaste, Assalamu Alaikum, Harun Nefer. This is Kasakma Keparu with another video for you. And in this video, we're going to talk about the power of the gods and oracle readings. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is the first time to my channel, hit the welcome button, or I should say the subscribe button, to get notifications when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. Also, we do have free ebooks for you. You can click on the links below and download your ebook and start reading right away. Lastly, if you're not already a supporter of ours on Patreon, consider doing so. You can get exclusive access to all types of content, instructional videos, which teach you about the esoteric and more on the Kemetic spiritual way of life. And also, please share this video with family and friends so we can get the revolution started. Harun Nefer. All right, so let's get into this discussion here. And I think it's a very important one because, you know, what I began to notice in my short time on this planet is how with each decade I see that there is, I hate to say the word, the dumbing down of the mass population, but it seems to be going in that direction. It's two things. It's the dumbing down of the mass population and the increasing of the sheep mindset to where people are more likely to follow the masses when they turn left or when they turn right without any questions. And it's very concerning because you would figure that as we progress, as we have the internet, we have means of gathering information, exchanging information, we would become more knowledgeable, more aware. But it tends to be almost the exact opposite. What I'm feeling like is individuals are caught in their own bubble, that there's a lot of information that they're not aware of, and they're looking to the group, not individual leaders, but to the group to validate them and to tell them which direction they need to go in. And that's very concerning, you know, because the one thing that we should focus on doing is dismantling the current structure, and that we should be looking to align ourselves with individuals who have as their agenda to create, and I hate to use this term, a type of revolution. But however, the idea of a revolution that we have is not one where the current system is dismantled and a new and better system is put in place. Our idea of a revolution is something far different from that. And that, again, is concerning. Let me give you a case in point. I see a lot of individuals on social media, and they are talking about, which is great things, being awoke, being conscious, rejecting the current religious doctrines, starting to put in place a different way of thinking. And I'm thinking, well, great, here are these mavericks. They're going to shake things up. We're going to finally resurrect the knowledge of our ancestors and the way of life, only to come to find that when you drill down and you question these individuals, they have absolutely no knowledge of our legacy, of the past. It's very cursory. In fact, the knowledge that they do have is more so disinformation that they tend to pride themselves on. And it's very, very interesting. And let me just give you a further example of this. When I teach about the Kemetic spiritual system, I am shocked to find that individuals don't have like a basic knowledge of certain things. When I speak about Ptah, Sekert, Ma'at, it's only a very superficial understanding of who these deities are, what they represent. And then I see individuals online and they're adorning themselves with the name of the deities, but consequently really don't understand the deities. So that tells me this. And I used to, there's a young guy I used to work with years ago, very much a revolutionary, very intelligent. And he had studied Kemet in and out. But I think that he had some wrong conclusions about Kemet. And the one thing that he would say, Cassant, the problem that Black people have in this country is that they're so caught up in form. And it was only recently that I began to see that he was right, that there's no substance to anything that we're doing. Because as I said before, when you drill down and you start to look and start to question these individuals, they don't really understand and know anything. So what I want you to take from this is just to understand this. You have to pride yourself on your legacy. You need to know it in and out. You need to practice it, and not to know it, not to be informed about it. There's a big difference, because Ma'at, in spite of what many may think, is not truth. It's the living of truth. That's a difference there, all right? Because you could know truth and violate truth. So the most important thing is for you to practice it. This is why we don't need religion. We need a spiritual way of life that is injected into everything that we do. When I have conversations with friends and family members, we actively talk about the deities. I talk about Sebek, I talk about Harukuhuti, I talk about Aset, Isis, as though these were real individuals, because they are. They're real deities. They're real intelligences. These gods and goddesses exist. They've gone nowhere. I mean, the ruling elite has tried to suppress this information, but these deities, thousands and thousands of years later, are still with us. And I want you to think about how much the Christian religion, how much work they've tried to suppress astrology, and it's still with us today. That's a testament of the ancestors being with us and ensuring that that knowledge is not lost. So I want you to go beyond just a superficial understanding of the great heritage that was left to you. I want you to pick it up and run with it. And I do want you to start thinking about, how do we dismantle the current structure, the religious institutions, corporate America, the educational institutions, and how do we put something better in place that is representative of the way our ancestors wanted us to live? And I'm not talking about in terms of a way of life that is totally relegated to African Americans. I'm talking about truth, because truth transcends time, transcends race, transcends gender. Truth is truth. So I really want us to stop with the adherence to form and really drill down and get to the heart of the knowledge, to understand what Ma'at represents, who she is as a deity. One of the issues that I had when I was studying at one temple, and I actually left, and I said, you treat the deities as if they're like psychological traits, which you can trace them to a type of pathology, yes, but they're real entities that exist, that acknowledge you, even though you may not acknowledge them. And until you start to believe in them in this way and to interact with them, we're not going to make any progress. You see, when you're looking at Well, we know there's a problem with the modern Western religion. So what are you going to put in place? Okay, we're going to put in place the Kemetic spiritual way of life. But in order to do that, you have to really believe and have a love for the gods. You can't treat them as myth because it doesn't work that way. You have to understand that if you're going to, let's get, for example, you have to say, well, if I'm going to work on a project, or if I have an objective, then I'm going to do an oracle reading. Then I am going to petition this deity. And then from there, build a relationship with the deities as if you were building a relationship with your ancestors. Because the pantheon of gods, there's going to be one or two in particular that you're going to have an affinity with. And those are the ones that will guide you in this lifetime if you play your cards right. You understand? But if you're going to just go around calling yourself Osset, calling yourself Osair, because it sounds cool, but you're not going to really live the life, you're not going to really practice the spiritual culture, then you're really doing nothing. You might as well keep supporting the current structures that's in place, which is detrimental to us, because you're not doing anything. It's not real to you. It's all a game. It's all mythology. You see, the ancient Greeks, when they worshiped Zeus, you know, these gods were real to them. There wasn't no mythos to them. You must understand that. So if you're going to play this game, play it to win. And when you find that you treat this with reverence and respect, you're going to get so much more in return than if you just treat it. See, a lot of this comes out of the Western psychology because you've been so trained to think superficially. You've been trained through the modern education system that this discipline is one among many disciplines to study. In other words, you can study the pantheon of the Greek deities or the Kemetic deities or the Yoruba deities. And it's treated so cold and surface-like that you almost take like a clinical approach to it. And what happens is you become cold and dispassionate. There's no connection to it for you. This is how you've been trained to think. And just because there's this array of mythological characters, whatever you want to call them, or deities from the different cultures, just because there's this array of them that you can study does not mean that they don't exist. I want you to understand that clearly, because you've been so caught up in the Western thinking that they have made the idea of Jesus, of Moses, of Muhammad, more real to you than Ma'at, Osair, and Aset. Ma'at is just as real, even more so than Jesus. You must understand that. And she should be treated with the utmost respect. Now, we're all human, we're all making mistakes. But the idea is the way you approach this will determine how much you get out of it. If you read about the deities as though, oh, it's very interesting reading. Oh, okay, it's this, it's that. Okay, what else have you got? Then you're losing. You're not gaining anything from the experience. When you go and you do an oracle reading with the Meduna Tear, you are unlocking powers, spiritual powers, that will manifest in your life if you treat it with respect. When I begin a project and I'm looking to accomplish something, I do the oracle reading, and the oracle reading is giving me, it's unlocking the magical principles that will allow me to be successful. And it is telling me what deity governs my success in that area. And then when I petition that deity, I talk to that deity as though they were just as real as the Christian God or Yahweh. And I build a relationship with that deity. You know, Ma'at, where did I go wrong today? Talk to me, Ma'at. Tell me. Aset, I am sorry. I have violated your principle of devotion. Please forgive me. The majority of us do not approach it from that perspective, do not communicate in that way to the deities. We treat the Western religions with more respect and hold them up in higher esteem than we do the deities of the Kemetic pantheon. Why is that? Why? I went to India and I studied Hinduism, and one of the deities that I loved was Shakti. Did I pick up the book and read about Shakti? Yes, I did. But after I put that book down, I was doing rituals. I was speaking to Shakti, asking for help. And in return, I would sacrifice this or that. And Shakti is one of my favorite deities. So much so that I have a love for when I speak that name. I even wrote a screenplay, a movie about Shakti. You know? But because I wasn't Indian, did I hold that in any less respect as Ma'at or Aser? No. I put Shakti up on that same level. Because Shakti was just as real as Osir or Osiris. And as I read more, I learned how powerful Shakti was. And it became more real to me. And I had people would come and say, hey, Kassan, how's the Shakti screenplay going? I said, it's going to be made one day. Believe me, it's going to be made, you know. But the current generation treats this all as if it's some form of study. Let's go to the study hall. Let's study about the Greek pantheon and then leave, and that's the end of that. People of color, and most people on the planet, believe it or not, are built to practice spirituality, not study spirituality. A difference. Again, going back to Ma'at is not truth. Ma'at is the living of truth. Big difference. Because Western man who's left brain and thinking, and the left brain is concrete thinking, does not penetrate and get deep down into indoctrinating him or herself into a way of life that encompasses that system. For the Western man, it is just a field of study. This is why the so-called institutions of higher learning are backwards as hell. This is why in ancient Egypt and ancient Kemet, they excelled at producing genii or geniuses, because they were not studying things. Astrology is not a field of study. Astrology is a field of living it. How does being a Pisces translate into your behavior on a day-to-day basis? How do the stars align to emphasize certain planetary energies that will affect you and what you do? That is the living and practicing of it. When you are going to do something in your life, it should first start out with the oracle reading, and then the oracle reading unlocks the spiritual energies and the magic for you to be successful in that endeavor. It reveals to you the deity that will assist you and work with you, not a psychological personality type, not a mythological figure, a living, breathing god or goddess that exists, that governs certain things. If I'm interested in being a computer programmer, I must show respect to Sebek or Anubis. If I am interested in being a merchant, a banker, I would speak with Ma'at. If my maid is expecting and she's going to have a baby and she wants to know how to be the best mother she can be, she will speak with Aset, Isis. If I want that promotion to be a manager, I would petition Heru or Horus, a real deity that came before the Christian idea of a Jesus or a Mary. That's a new recent concoction, the idea of Jesus and Mary. It's fairly new to the planet. Prior to that, Kemet, the deities of Kemet ruled. But somewhere along the way, we forgot to pour our hearts and minds into the love for these gods and goddesses because we were taught incorrectly. And I want us to get back on the path, back on the right way of looking at things. It is not a field of study, it is a field of practice. It is something that you pour your spirit into. You see, when I unlock the secrets from the oracle reading of what deity is going to lend a hand in me being successful at a particular endeavor, and I do the ritual, there's a transference of energy. You see, I am transferring energy from my spirit into the ritual. And then the god or goddess is taking that energy, channeling it so it can be used for my success. So I want you all to start thinking about that. I want you to when you hear the deities' names, your spirit moves. Something inside you rattles. Because it's like coming home. Because it means something. If I say to you, Tahuti, Jehuti, and you don't feel anything, that shows that you're not in alignment with the truth or what's going on. You have people in Africa so fanatical and crazy about white Jesus because they have been programmed to be that way. So much so that seeing Jesus on the cross causes them to burst into tears. I went to see that movie years ago by Mel Gibson, the movie he made about Jesus. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking to my left, I'm looking to my right, and I'm seeing these women are crying when Jesus is being whipped and crucified. And I'm like, what? You do realize that that's a plagiarized version of the god Osiris, right? That is how you should feel in the story of Asar and Aset, the Assyrian drama about Oser being cut into 14 pieces by his evil brother Set. You should be, and there's a ritual called the Tears of Aset, the mourning of Aset, and that is when she learns of Oser's death, she starts to cry. That is how you should feel when you read that passage of Asar being killed by his evil brother. And then when Aset puts the pieces of Asar back together again and he is resurrected, the rising sun, you should feel elated for that. You should feel something for that. But many of you don't. And that shows you that something is not in alignment, that something is wrong. I actually was mystified when I would talk to people in the spiritual community and they were talking about doing things. I said, oh yeah, okay, great, you're gonna do this? What did your oracle reading say? And they looked at me puzzled. And I was like, what? You mean you guys are not practicing a divination system? And they're like, no. And you claim to be spiritual? You claim to be practicing the religion of our ancestors? And you have no divination system? I was like, what the fuck? What are you doing then? What are you doing? Something's wrong. You know what I'm saying? Some things are a no-brainer, you know? If you're really studying spirituality, if you're really studying the occult, if you're really studying magic because you want to be a magician, and not just a magician, a powerful magician on the level of maybe Ptah, on the level of Sekert, then you're going to use everything that comes along that works. And how some people pick and choose and filter out certain things is beyond me. It makes no sense to me. Some people call themselves spiritual. I say, well, did you ever create an ergogore? What's that? A pendulum? What's that? A thought virus? What's that? Seriously? And that's basic stuff for the magician. Basic stuff. I'm not even getting to the higher level of mysticism. But you see, it's more convenient to observe the form than to really get into the substance of things. Are you playing or are you serious? Are you really looking to unlock real magical powers? Or are you just cool to walk around and call yourself Osair or Cyrus? Because if that's what you want to do, you want to play cool, I guess that's okay, but don't expect that this current system is going to go anywhere. It's going to stay the way it is. It's going to oppress more people. It's going to murder, rape, pillage. It's going to do the same thing it's always been doing. It's not going to change because you want to play names. You want to look good. You want to sound good, but you don't get your hands dirty. So don't expect things to change. If I do an oracle reading and I say, okay, this deity is going to govern your success in getting you that money, then get up off your ass and do a ritual to that deity. Stop playing games. I talked to some people, they don't even know the story of Asar and Aset, but you know the story of Mary and Jesus, don't you? How can that be? How can that be? We don't want a revolution. We don't want change. We say it, but we don't. Because realistically, the ancestors have left everything that we need to remove the cabal from their position of power. But the reason that the cabal is still there is because we're still operating at the same vibrational frequency. We're still operating where we are supporting the structure. One of the books you should get that's a really good book that will bring things into perspective is called The Christ Conspiracy, the greatest story ever sold. It really talks about how they plagiarized the Kemetic spiritual way of life or religion and create the fictitious characters of Jesus, Mary, Noah, Moses, so on and so on. And if you don't like that, the way I use that term, fictitious characters, well, I don't like the fact that they stole my gods, rewrote the story, and gave them these stupid Western names. Mary, Joseph. How can anybody be that name in Africa? They couldn't have names like that. But you don't understand that because you don't want to investigate where the King James Version of the Bible originated, how it was plagiarized, how it was rewritten a number of times, and the Conference of Nicaea in 325 AD, and the Roman Emperor Constantine when he took us out of the cult of the moon and put us in the cult of the sun. You don't want to understand all of that. You don't want to understand that there's a certain particular day of the week that if you do a ritual, you can ask for something and it can be granted. You don't want to go that deep, do you? You don't want all that information because you rather just keep the current system in place. And maybe I push too hard. Maybe I expect too much from a new generation. But if that new generation didn't turn around and every time they see something say it's wrong and they want change, then hey, I wouldn't expect so much. But I do. Because you keep saying that things are wrong and you want change. But then when I bring it to you, you do nothing with it. There's no choice here. There's no choice. You're going to be doing meditations. You're going to be doing rituals. You're going to be doing oracle readings. You're going to build a relationship with the deities. Because if you're saying you want a revolution, then that's what has to happen. Because that was the right way of life. Not even that. Because I do understand that some of us are so indoctrinated into the Western mindset that the idea of a ritual or spirit possession frightens us. Okay, I understand that because we've been so manipulated and brainwashed by the current system that we see this as being pagan and evil and corrupt. Okay, good point. I understand. I understand how you feel. It's very hard to change an ingrained belief system. Very hard to change that. But you see, there's this thing, this field of study called quantum mechanics, and it has come along and snuck up on us. And it has validated everything our ancestors talked about. So when our ancestors talked about the world you see around you is an illusion, it's Maya, well, quantum mechanics tells us that it's really a holographic experience. There's no reality. It's all in your mind. So, okay, you may not want to do the meditations and this and that, and you may be so indoctrinated into the Western mindset and accept the Western science. But then again, you got a conundrum here, because you see, Western science validates the spiritual teachings of our ancestors. Western science tells us that your thoughts and your beliefs create the 4D experience that you see before you. Since you're not apt to believing our ancestors, and you recoil from that because you've been so indoctrinated into the Western ideas, and you're so readily to embrace the law of attraction, the secret, and all of that stuff, not realizing that when you're practicing the law of attraction and the secret, you're really practicing meditation, you're really performing a ritual. You understand? It's the same thing. But they played a setback game on you because they merely just changed the names on certain things. Whereas our ancestors called it Maya, reality, Maya, and illusion. The Western science calls it a holographic experience, a hologram, not real. Where Western science says the universe is conscious. Our ancestors said that God, Neter, Nebecher, is the all-seeing eye. So just letting you know that they're playing a word game on you. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And whereas they talked about the atom when you're studying things on the atomic level, we said there's atom. Where they talked about there's positive and negative energy, we said there's Shu and Tefnut. Different names, but we codified that energy systems. Where they talked about sonic frequencies, and it's those vibrational sounds that give rise to reality. We codified that as the primordial waters of Nun, sound frequency vibrations that gave rise to reality. Just word games, wordplay, that's all it is. Same thing. Just letting you know. So the two one day will meet. They will be a coming together of the Kemetic science and the Western science. Because already scientists know that they're in trouble. Because there's going to get to a point where they're going to have to admit that our ancestors were more sophisticated and more smart than they originally thought. And that what science thinks they're discovering has already been discovered by our ancestors. So they're going to have to eventually admit that. And I think they will. I don't think there will be a problem. I think in the near future, because already we do have those scientists out there who are admitting the truth of this, but they've been ostracized. their funding has been cut off because they have spoken the truth and said that ancient Egypt was created by African people, Black African people. But they'll get to a point where there's so many in academia that are saying this that they can't cut off the funding to everybody. You know what I mean? So finally, they're just going to have to throw their hands up and say, okay, we have to admit it, that ancient Kemet was a Black African civilization, and that they knew that the basis of reality was comprised of subatomic particles, which they themselves discovered prior to us discovering it with our microscopes. And they had no microscopes, and they were able to understand that there were atoms and, you know. But then what's going to happen with religion? They're going to have to acquiesce too. But they're going to have a harder time with it, and they're going to fight tooth and nail. Because you see, the masses have been fooled into believing that the religious leaders are God-fearing and God-loving people when they're not. You see, you have your religious leaders that are out there that are teaching and preaching, and they're just as ignorant. But then you have those who are at the top, the Pope, you know, Queen of England. And these individuals are sinister and they're evil. And they will not go willingly. And that's when it's going to have to be to the masses of us who are embracing the new way, the new spirituality, to hold them accountable for the crimes that they have committed, the lies they have perpetrated, the truth they have hidden. But we can only do that if we ourselves embrace this truth, embrace this spiritual way of life, stop playing games. I remember I was talking with somebody, and they actually caught me by surprise. It's very rare that happens. And we were talking, and I was like, so you want to do that on Friday night? And she was like, sure, but let me do an oracle reading first. And I was like, whoop. I was like, oh, all right, cool. That threw me. I was like, I didn't expect that, you know? And I was like, beautiful, beautiful. And I was like, that's how you live in. That's great. That's how we should be living, people. That's how we should be living. So in other words, what she was saying to me was, I would like to do this, but let me see if God sanctions it first. Because that's what the oracle reading is. It's God saying, yes, it's cool to do this. You don't understand what I'm saying? That's how you should be living your life. You have argument with your mate, you go, okay, let's just stop. Let's cool down a bit. Let's go to the oracle and find out, like, you know, who's right, who's wrong, what we should do, how we should handle the situation. Should we send our daughter to this school? Should we go to this school? Should we take this job? Should we not take this job? Should we buy this car? Should we rent this apartment? Should I date her? Should I date him? That is for the oracles to decide. Because you have a limited mind. You can't see far down the road. You can't see that the person you're involved with may suddenly turn out to be an alcoholic and become physically abusive to you. You can't see that. You can't know that. But the oracle can. The oracle can reveal that to you. The oracle can say, don't become involved with this person because 5 years down the road, they're going to get addicted to drugs, alcohol, and they're going to carry you through hell. Now, I'm not saying that the minute you accept the spiritual way of life, that everything is going to be netchem, beautiful, and you're going to have such an easy stroll through life. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'd be lying if I told you that. You're still going to encounter challenges in life, because from those challenges, you spiritually grow. From those challenges, you learn to exercise your spiritual power. I've had a lot of hardships, a lot of hardships. I mean, primarily because I'm good looking, but anyway, that's besides the point. But those hardships were planned for me by Neter. Why? Because if those hardships weren't there, I would never have done the oracle reading. If those hardships were there, I would never have done the ritual. If those hardships weren't there, I would never have done the meditation. So those were purposely put in my path to set me on the spiritual path, if that makes sense. So don't think that everything's going to be beautiful. No, Neter is still going to put some obstructions in your way. Neter is still going to put some challenges in your way, just so you can turn inward upon yourself as a god or goddess and start to utilize your spiritual power. Start to awaken the power within yourself. Because if it wasn't for those challenges in my life, I would never have done the things I've done from a spiritual perspective, meaning dive deep into summoning spirits, communicating with ancestors, creating an ergobor. I would never have done those things if those challenges weren't there. That's why those challenges have to be there to push you in that right direction. But remember, all this is for you to come into a realization of who you really are, which is Osiris. That's who your true nature is. That's who you are. You forget that. So those challenges come up to remind you, hey, don't forget, you're a god. Don't forget now. This is why those charlatans, those liars, those deceivers, those devils who stand on the pulpit and smile in your face and tell you that because they've accepted Jesus, that they have a blessed life. Shit, I'd be smiling too on the pulpit if I had $40 million in the bank. They are big deceivers and liars. Because you must understand that within you is Amen, a peace that nothing can disturb, a peace that keeps you centered always. God never said, because you accept the Kemetic spiritual way of life, you will have no problems. God never said that. But God did say that if you accept the Kemetic spiritual life and learn how to use your power, you will be able to tap into a peace that nothing can disturb. But these charlatans, these deceivers come along and they lie to you and say, if you accept Jesus and born again, you shall forever be happy and smiling. That's a lie. No one, that's not, you're not human if you're all the time, if you're happy and smiling. That's not being human. No one can do that. And they make it look good too up there. Well, yes, Jesus has blessed me and my beautiful wife. And we are all the time, we're just happy because we have faith. We have faith. Everything was wonderful. Ever since that day, we accepted Jesus into our lives. Let me tell you something. You're living a lie. And no one calls them out on this. They're living a lie. Because everything about what they are practicing is plagiarized and stolen. Again, get the book, The Christ Conspiracy. They're living a lie. And I'm sorry, but I choose not to do that. I choose not to follow in their footsteps. I choose to embrace the truth. But see, they need you to finance their lifestyle. They need you to tie to them because they don't care about you. The Pope doesn't care about you. The Queen doesn't care about you. The president doesn't care about you. So they have to tell you a lie to keep you supporting them, to keep you following them. This is where we go back to why I originally wanted to do this broadcast, to talk about, are you really out there for a change? Are you really pro-revolution? Because that revolution is going to have to start with you embracing the truth of your spiritual nature, that you are a god, you are a goddess. That's the truth. That you are endowed with the same powers as God, not in quantity, but in quality. This is why God said, let us make man in our image. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not asking you to dive deep into the spiritual system, to know it from backwards and forward, and know the numbers on the Kemetic tree of life, and to know the different states, the objective realm, the subjective realm, and all of that. I'm not into. You don't have to know all of the dimensions and all of that. But what I'm saying is, there's a certain level of proficiency you should have, such as knowing the deities, knowing their correspondence, knowing what they govern. And when you live your life following those principles, something as simple as this. When I speak to people, I say, my person doesn't like that. My person loves that. Because I am identifying the two different divisions of my spirit, of who I am. I am telling you there is my true self, which is Oser, and then there's the person, which is that which is based on conditioning and programs. Because the person is a product of social engineering. You've been conditioned to like this, conditioned to hate this. So I identify and I say, my person doesn't like that. My person loves this. But my true self has no propensities to likes or dislikes. My pure true self is consciousness. I am the observer, having an experience and observing. So I make that distinction in the way I talk and the way I communicate, so that I remind myself of who I am. And I never forget that there is a person and there is the self. And that's really the heart of a lot of the problems that we're experiencing in the world today, that we forgot who we are and we identify with the person. We believe we are the person, so we become trapped in the person, which is the geb, the physicality, the physical being, the physical shell. You're not that person. That's not you. That's merely a vehicle for you to experience 4D. That's the only way you can experience 4D, by having that shell to house your consciousness, the true essence of who you are. And that as you go through life, you rise You rise from being Sahu, the animal spirit, to the Eb, mod level, to the Shekam, the level of true power. And we must always keep that in mind. We don't deny that there's an animal nature to us. We understand that we have a Sahu side to us, but we also understand that we have the ability to subdue it and ignore it, and it doesn't compel us to act. But some of us nurture it so much that it controls them. That animal is in the driver's seat. But your goal is to remember who you are and subdue that animal. As in the story of Asar and Set, where Haru subdued Set, his animal nature, his mammalian reptilian brain. You are Haru, ascending to the throne. And when you take your seat at that throne, you will be a god. That is the goal. That is what every pharaoh, every queen in Egypt aspired to do. That was that was the prime directive. That was everything to them. They in no way could separate church from state, because spirituality was about everything. That was the most important thing in ancient Kemet. Call it a theocracy, whatever you want. But we didn't create these divisions because we sought, as being right brain thinkers, to incorporate spirituality in everything. This society seeks to separate religion, separate spirituality, so that these individuals can do wrong and get away with it. I never said I was a Christian. Yes, I embezzled the money. Yes, I stole everyone's 401k, but I never said I was a Christian. I never said I was practicing religion. So your president can start more wars, topple governments, bankrupt third world countries. And he can get away with it because there's no religion or spirituality to hold him accountable for moral ideas. There is no morality. This is why they can get away with it. And this is why there's a big problem with the system the way it is now, because it's divorced of morality. Corporate America is the most immoral place to be. And to tell you and to show you how the masses of us have not spiritually evolved, how we're nothing more than the animal spirit. If there ever is a blackout or the power goes out, watch how everyone resorts to the animal nature of robbing, pillaging, looking out for self, stealing. This is why in Kemet they made it their utmost concern to be spiritual, so that when the lights went out, they were still gods. That they didn't resort to the animal nature. They ferreted that out. I saw a meme where it talked about how man is such a violent creature. And I said, what man is a violent creature? Not ancient man. We were spiritual beings. Are you talking about this modern man? Yes, this modern man is violent. This modern man is immoral. But in ancient and antiquity, morality was the focus. Morality was the focus, so much so that they created a deity to symbolize that, Ma'at. And that was one of the most prominent deities of ancient Kemet. That shows you how much the people looked at righteousness, looked at justice, looked at truth, that they codified that one idea as a deity, and not only as a deity, but a female deity. Think about that. Because they knew morality was associated with the right brain, and the right brain is the yin principle, the female principle. There's a rhyme and reason to what our ancestors were doing. They were very intelligent. And in the Christian doctrine, what did they do? Well, God gave you these little 10 little sayings or commandments about right and wrong, and that's it. And then outside of that, the God did all kinds of things. Killing, was jealous, telling people to give up their firstborn or allowing the firstborn to be slaughtered. I don't know what kind of God is that. You'll find no Kemetic deity saying that if you don't believe in me, I'm the only God. You can't have a God before me. You'll find no Kemetic deity endorsing slavery, flooding the world, killing most of the people in the world. I don't know how a God gets away with doing that. So you're telling me that there was no one on the planet that was good. You had to just kill everyone on the planet with this flood thing. What kind of God is that? And people follow that, and people believe that. That's crazy. That's backwards. This is why our ancestors were so intelligent. They knew that Ma'at could be nothing without Tehuti, because Ma'at is relational thinking, and Ma'at was the law, and Tehuti was the knowledge of how to administer the law. You had to have those two together. You couldn't just have the law. You have to have a means and measures to administer or know when to administer the law through Tehuti, the oracles. And then, of course, Ma'at is nothing without the ability to enforce the law, and then you have Hurukahuti. All of them work together to form a perfect ecosystem, a cosmological system that gives you order, structure, truth. And this is why most of these religions paint Kemet as evil, paint the pharaoh as evil, because there's truth there, and they don't want you to know that truth about the Kemetic way of life. They don't want you to learn it and embrace it and bring back that civilization. They don't want that. So they have to vilify it. That's their propaganda. That's their propaganda. Make Kemet seem evil, seem pagan. Make the Egyptians just seem backwards. Animal worshippers. This is why you have to take a deep dive and study and understand what they really were about, which is truth. And then you following in those footsteps and practicing and living by that doctrine. Because it not only honors the ancestors and honors your legacy, but it resurrects the God within you to bring you to a higher level, a higher understanding, a higher way of being than most of the Sahu people out here now. Because that's what they are. Most of the people on this planet are Sahu. And that they were socially engineered to be that way. Because when you operate out the animal spirit, you become easy to manipulate, easy to control. You can't have a planet of gods and goddesses. You can't. And still want to rule it. So the ruling elite knew that they had to get people to identify with the animal nature within them. And not to cultivate the higher aspects of their being. So they concocted these religions to do exactly that. To nurture, to feed the animal spirit within you, so it would control you. And then you have these nincompoops come out and say, well, man is violent. Man is evil. No, modern man is, but man and woman from antiquity were gods. Get that straight. Understand that. Conspiracy theorists, they come along and say, well, we're so violent because our DNA was manipulated to be violent. No, that's not true. So that's a half-truth in a way. Because their idea is to paint us all as the same and say, we're all evil. We're all the same. I'm sorry, my ancestors were not the same as your ancestors, okay? Not the same. My ancestors created the gods and the idea of a goddess that express the concept of truth and spirituality and oneness. Your God was destroying and killing people with fire and brimstone or whatever, and slaughtering people and flooding the planet. So don't tell me that man is evil as a generalized statement. No, sorry. You're evil. You people are evil for what you have done. My ancestors didn't do that. My ancestors didn't enslave a whole race of people based on skin color. We didn't do that. We would never have done that. We didn't think that way. So I want to thank you, and I hope that this message resonates within you, that it awakens something within you, and it spurs you to action, so that you start to get deeper into the Kemetic spiritual way of life. So you start to look at things in a different way, and that the study of the gods and the oracles spiritually move you, spiritually excites you. And if it does, then wonderful. That's the first step in the right direction. I want to thank you all. This is Kasank Ma Keparu, son of Ma and Tahuti. Ma'at is the beautiful goddess Heteru. Until my next video, Amen Ra.